G'day friends and fans, welcome to Dave Talk Stuff, Ukraine War Update for the 27th of March 2026. I'm your host, the author David Applegate, and as the war continues, I continue to bring you unbiased news from both sides of the conflict. As you can see, the drone attacks have shifted focus from what is expected to be a large-scale attack, instead has been moved out somewhat. So, again, according to Ukrainian intelligence, Russia's only using 40% of its daily drone capacity on Ukraine. Some allegedly are going to Iran, but according to Rostov, the manufacturer, Russia is stockpiling drones and other ammunition, fearing a European intervention in Ukraine. Of course, if you're Ukrainian, you hear the usual, that's Russian propaganda, and if you're Russian, you have lived with the fear of a European invasion ever since World War II. And a lot of people don't know this. But yes, it's the official position of the Russian government. It doesn't have to be true. It doesn't have to be credible. But if you were to look at how deceptive and hostile Europe is to Russia, one could argue that it's not so much about the war today. If you go back to 1909, the Germans were very dismissive of the threats made by England until rail lines started getting destroyed. Oh, no, Laurence Olivier was a freedom fighter, and not in the Middle East to destroy the German railway headed to, it was the Turkish freedom. Yeah, so there are historical things that Russia has pointed to and says, well, this feels like 1909 or the rumblings of Napoleon or that other little mustache guy. Actually, did Napoleon have a mustache? I don't think so. No. Napoleon didn't have a mustache. But it was definitely a little guy. Now, the battlefield has pretty much, instead of being a series of intense attacks, has been a series of smaller, not smaller in number, but smaller in scale and more, but however more frequent and more spread out. So Russia's still putting maximum pressure they can bear on Ukraine without escalation. So they're attacking in more places to pressure the Ukrainians. Now, there are some areas, of course, where the attacks are going to be constant, like Lyman. However, there has been an advance west of Seversk. Now, where Ukraine has suffered battlefield losses, we have Pazino. The Ukrainians have been pushed back to Palznino. And as we can see, wait. It's not showing. I thought. Nope. Can I locate it very quickly on a map? What's it north of, or what's it south of? Okay, looking here. Okay. This is a weird one. Okay. Okay, we go from Chavashar to Bakhmut. There's Krevny Hora. Okay, it's in there. Okay, it's not marked. Must be, yeah. Okay, so it's not marked, and prisoner not marked. Okay. So we have Russian advances in this area. As we go through the rest of the map, the next and only other advance is here near Harishny. You can see the Russians have entered. They're attacking the outskirts. They have. So there's, yeah. And as for the rest of the battlefield, it is getting pulverized, but the Ukrainians are holding. Now the Russians have, like I said, the Russians have taken to new tactics. And these tactics, while, are not the only ones. Ukraine has done this as well previously. For the last couple of years, Ukraine has used light utility sports vehicles. These are cheap, inexpensive off-road vehicles. Some as cheap as $700, and they are being armed with light shoulder-launched weapons. Some use them as primarily air defense, others anti-tank. Now they themselves, when hit, provide no protection. If anything, they're a plastic bubble that melts, and you don't want to be inside when you hit. But as you can see, the damn ads are freezing up the page. All right. So as you can see, lots of activity, little gains. On the Russian side, the Ukrainians have reported no territorial gains. Yet every pro-Ukrainian channel keeps having them marching to Moscow. Sooner or later, it has to give. Sooner or later, if Russia takes it a huge victory, which would be probably cost Novica or something. Until then, they are going to just cope and seethe. Keep telling you how they're pushing back. But there is no indication that Russia is going to make any great advance soon. But that doesn't. But there is also suggestions they will get. Ukraine seems to have two sides of the same political party now at odds with each other. We'll get to that later. First, the Russians have the Russians have used the AM-1, well, the all-terrain um, vehicle in Ukraine for dispatch riders and supply riders in Ukraine have used the ATM since the beginning of the war. Or, I don't know why it's called the ATM in Russian. If anybody knows, if that's a mistake, yeah, AM-1, yeah, all-terrain vehicle. Now, this is modified. The Russian military has decreased its sound, increased its engine output. They have put a bit of a weight on the front in the form of a bull bar. They have increased the vehicle's power. They have increased its tyres. And the other modification, as you can tell, is a rotation mount. Now, again, these were primarily used and have been used by Russian dispatch riders. You can see it's got its bigger chunky tyres. You can see its modified body there. This is a protective casing, primarily not for protect to get mud and anything else that comes up off the tyres, not to stick to the engine casing and the fuel tank. It is carbon fibre. But what they've added, is you can see a central mount. You can still see it's got its little tray. It's primarily used to deliver ammunition, water. In this case, you see it's got water. This is the new version of the Russian grenade launcher. The Russian special forces are using these for what they call lightning raids. This is pretty much where they rock up, hit Ukrainian positions, and drive off. And they have been successful. Here we have a Comet, or a Comet 2 line. I think this is Comet 2, actually. There it is in launch. And you can see, and they do use them for recreation, but there she goes. Same one. And here's the latest batch for delivery. As you can see, they come with various vehicles as well. This is the Russian transport is it division? The logistics division. Transport and logistics taking. Now, they have been dispatched also to other countries. Can you guess? Actually, it's believed these have been widely used in many countries, not just Russia's immediate allies, but BRICS as a whole. Apparently, even the Chinese have bought some. This is the factory that China recently tried to take over, and Putin exercised his presidential discretion on national security to make sure that this plant would not fall into foreign hands or foreign control. And yes, the Chinese do make a knockoff, but this is an earlier version of the vehicle that has been dispatched around the world. But primarily it's used by dispatch riders. And instead of front mounting the weapon, they have rear mounted the weapon, because fire on the go, not very stable, but it can. They do have still, as you can see with the mount, the ability to still 1, 2, 3 to put those mounts back on there. But there you go, front and back mounts. You see it there for for Special Forces operations. So it still has fire-on-the-go capability and turning the rear into a passenger seat. Now, Ukraine has a sports utility vehicle. It's quite different. I believe it's called the Tempest. Now, whether you believe the rumours or not, and these rumours did originate in Ukraine from Ukraine Pravda, whether or not Kylo Budanov would be Zelensky's replacement. He has neither discouraged or encouraged such talk. There has been times he has suggested he may run if Zelensky steps down. There are those who want him to run. There are many who believe Zelensky has run his course. And you have to do a lot of reading between the lines to know whether or not how popular or unpopular Zelensky is. But to be talking now of a major hope of a major exchange of POWs, there has been many exchanges in the past. There is continuing negotiations. Now, they're almost impossible without Ukraine's foreign partners. Ukraine cannot provide the support or the buses to go to pick up these POWs in delivering Russian POWs and coming back with from the border. They're literally in financial trouble. This is, if you read between the lines, and you go, no. Yeah, are they? But then the more you read, more articles you read, it's a never-ending soap opera. In fact, Zelensky's team is now in talks with the International Monetary Fund and to facilitate Ukrainian funding. There was during the week, during 10th to 13th, there was tense talks in Ukraine as Parliament failed to meet. They could not gather. Now, no one has. There's been multiple rumours, of course, across Telegram as to why. Now, some blame president, but there's generally a disquiet by a lot of people asking where their MPs are at, and it's believed some have fled the country. Others believe they're holding out in Western Ukraine, refusing to come because Ukraine was under fire. Others say there has been some deaths or some injuries. So unless the Duma comes out and says, here we are, this is why we can't meet, people are going to speculate, particularly in Ukraine when all they got is time on their hands and a never-ending flow of every hour a new story. So, and translating Ukrainian Telegram is painstaking. Now, Google Translate is not the fastest and most accurate in the world. So it's pretty good that Ukraine Pravda is hiring English speakers. Not saying it's predominantly US intelligence or British intelligence or any foreign intelligence. It's just nice that they actually got some pretty decent English speakers over there. Last year, they were in a mess. That's because they were not well funded. They have increased their... they've obviously... they are financially supported by external patrons. They are not funded by the Ukrainian government anymore. Nor is a lot of media in Ukraine. Anything that's not nailed down by Kremlinsky is pretty much dying in Ukraine. A lot of businesses are dying in Ukraine. A lot of malls have closed. Now, the Ukrainian president has set out a set of meetings, and a lot of people believe this is starting to resemble a soap opera where they have a lot of meetings. Others compare it to a full-scale Greek tragedy where there's nothing but nothing's but a distraction from the never-ending tragedy of the war. You know, oh, someone dies. Oh, we talk about our dear friend Trojan. You know, oh, what a wonderful friend he is. He's still alive, but they're doing anything they can to just want to make sure you know what a dear friend he is. But they're not, okay? They're not talking about Trump as a dear friend. They are reminding you that he used to be a dear friend. They do not consider him a dear friend anymore. Now, can you survive when its main legislative body is close to paralysis? Its cabinet of ministers is unable to meet. It's run by people they call graduate students. In other words, why is the government the government ministers are in hiding? Why? Most believe they're targets of the Russians without any evidence to the contrary. One must assume they have something they can point to in Ukraine that, whether or not it's propaganda, does not matter. They have some reason that they can point to and say, we are targets, we're not coming, we're sending our interns or our assistants or our lawyers. Now, apparently this was not good enough for the vote, because fiscal votes apparently require the executive body, not the lower house or Duma or whatever, or you can't just send representatives. You, the elected official, has to appear in Parliament. Apparently they have to now work out new laws. And what is the whole situation that is causing the drama? Well, they have to fight. They are looking at the prospect of fighting on without American support, because they have refused, not once, not twice, but thrice now, Trump's peace offer. And Trump has given him a deadline, and he says, I'm serious, if you do not meet ABC goals, you will get cut off. And they've already, and of course, Viktor Orban has cut them off from European funding. But it's also, they have not received their ongoing economic funding. They think the fact that Ukraine is saying that US ceased to be an ally. Full stop. Not even a neutral mediator. Full stop. They believe they're now under covert or extensive pressure to end the war. They're threatening to cut off intelligence and access to some weapon supplies. Well, here's the thing. In world politics, the big powers get to tell the little ones what to do. This has always been. You don't rock up and say, hey, you with the cannon, give me your cannon. And then just rock off, use it, abuse it, break it, and then say, see ya. No, the people of that town want that cannon. They want it back. And they want it back in the condition they gave it to you. It's not like ammunition. But now increasingly, the amount of gear, right? Ukraine rocks up and says, oh, we lost your Abrams tanks. We told you to withdraw them from under heavy fire. No, we pressed forward like you said. No, we didn't. That's not what we told you. See, there's a disconnect there on each side. Who's right? Most people, unfortunately, in Europe think Ukraine is right. But more and more Americans are saying, no, you can break a tank. Okay, you return it to us, we get that. But you don't once, twice, 3, 4, 5, 6 times storm head-on, solo, into the middle of the Russians and think that this tank can just fire away. Did you learn nothing from the British tanks in Basra? Right? They already knew since the 90s, de-tracking, or long since then, that the Russians know how to de-track an Abrams or a Challenger or a Leopard or any modern tank. In fact, the Russians learnt already back in World War II that you didn't have to destroy a King Tiger. You only had to de-track it and then get out of range of its guns and come up behind it at night and molly its engine block. The Germans can't stay in a cold tank all night. And even if they did, they're going to be nice and warm once you Molotov cocktail that engine block. No. It seems to be beyond the grasp of most people that America is not your piggy bank anymore. This is the problem. And this has happened since World War II. Every nation thought Roosevelt's promise or Truman's promise is an infinite guarantee that every American government is going to take all your refugees. Every American government's going to flood you with money. Every American government's going to fix every boo-boo for you. Kiss you on, oh, you scraped your knee. Oh, the American government's going to come along and kiss it and give you a Band-Aid and put a tenner in your pocket and tell you what a good little boy you are. And this is the problem. Whether it's England, Ukraine, most of Africa, the hands have been out for a long time. India. And what has the return on investment been? A middle finger. So Trump, whether you like it or not, has tapped in to a lot of angry people in America who are sick and tired of the gravy train going one way out of their pocket. They are sick of being the second-class citizen. They are sick of this false Christianity where everyone has to get on their knees and give everything away to please the Almighty, when the Almighty is not God, but some sycophant billionaire on the hill telling you to give more, give generously, while his wealth gets bigger, his mansions get bigger, he goes from a little private plane to a big jumbo jet private plane. No, I know some people are going to say, but Trump. No, I am talking about the rise of the altruistic billionaire who gets richer, Mackenzie Bezos, Bill Gates, Jeff Bezos, okay? Although I think Mackenzie's changed the name back to Scott. I don't know. I'm not keeping up with them. All I know is that you have a lot of people who have had literally wealth handed to them, and they distribute the wealth from themselves to a small amount of people in foreign countries who then build up big businesses. You see that with the rise of the billionaire telecom tycoons across the world. Now, Ukraine is actually one of the few countries that has not produced one, not two, but 9 billionaires out of this post-Soviet era. And they're all pretty much oligarchs. And from a military standpoint, according to Ukraine, they cannot withdraw from the Donbass because there's no guarantee to end Russian aggression. Now, according to the US-Russian plan, it will. Again, Ukraine cannot defend to themselves, right? They believe that it's just advantageous handing everything Putin wants, right? Undermining the battlefield. Now, the new defense minister, new team, undergoing rapid transformation of drone procurement, trying to cut off Russia from Starlink. Now, I don't know if Russia was using Starlink or not to spy on Ukraine. It would make sense if Ukraine is using Starlink to monitor Starlink for activity in Ukraine. Digital battlefield control or short-range air defences, this layered short-range defence system consists of drone watchers and mobile defences and manned teams at key points with interceptor drones. It is, of course, with US operations in Iran, it has cut the number of drones available to Russia. But Russia has shifted drone production, and whether or not Ukraine can fund the war, well, they are cut off from 90 billion in loans by Hungary. Europe's ongoing funding is down to less than 50 billion. That could run out by June, July. 3-point-something billion has not been delivered to Ukraine. Their loans with various organisations. They're facing a rising interest rate. Ukraine has allegedly a lot of problems, according to a senior MP, which was posted on RT. To give context to the story, here's the original story. Hertmannshoff, chairman or chair of the Finance Committee of the People's Parliament of Ukraine, has stated in his speech in 2025 that Ukraine has failed to meet 14 indicators of the Ukraine Facility Program, and as a result, they did not receive $3.9 billion in funding. Part of these funds have already been lost. Apparently, what he's talking about. Now, he's a member of the Servant of the People. This is Zelensky's party, according to Censor.net. Now, according to this, right, the funding that Europe was procuring was coming from the World Bank. Now, the IMF program's also at risk. Now, apparently, this is because when Ukraine's parliament met, it failed to achieve the minimum representation of the people under Ukrainian law and under European Parliament for reforms to hold an independent vote, a vote independent of the office of president. Instead, there were a bunch of fresh-faced kids nobody knew, apparently there to represent the people who are unquote, quote, missing. Well, lots of people are pissed because there are no explanations, just buck passing. Now, what was this vote about? Now, we finally get a bit of context from the Russians. Apparently, they're telling us Ukraine was trying to raise taxes on digital goods. Now, I don't know how exactly how much money we're talking about here, but Ukraine and digital goods, I think, would be a low priority, but apparently it seems a high priority for the Ukrainian parliament to prevent the country's complete collapse, and believes that they cannot lose this way. They're looking for Europeans' help to deregulate, to reform their pensions, to audit state expenditures, and bring the economy out of the brink. But there's no vote. Because if Zelensky's running parliament, Where's the parliamentarians? I don't believe he's got the time to run Parliament and run the war and run around. Obviously, there are teams of different committees doing things. Okay, most people understand the president of the country is supposed to be a figurehead who just makes announcements and everybody tries to figure out what he wants and gets it done. This is why you have cabinet meetings and public forums and discussions, things that Ukraine has failed to achieve. And the Russians are using the most powerful tool of propaganda ever. Find your enemies' failures and publicize them over and over again. Now, Ukraine should have been able to... Now this 50 billion apparently is part of Ukraine's core budget lifeline from the EU. And if they wanted EU money, they had to follow the rule of law. The basic rule of law, right, to follow the basic fundamentals of governments, they had to provide a pathway to financial stability, which is hard under war, and have a robust, independent anti-corruption commission. They failed to pass 4 laws covering e-finance, railway transport, World Bank and apparently this cost them $3.3 billion in World Bank financing. And also they have only $8.1 billion in credit, and without which now key tax legislation, again, okay, no one's saying what happened to these MPs, why they failed to appear. Now, the Russians may know, but aren't saying. And Zelensky obviously knows, and he isn't saying. Does the media know? Well, if they do, there's no indication. Now, you're telling me the president can't go on the phone and ask the head of intelligence, who has protective details, or British intelligence, or anybody who is supposed to be protecting the Ukrainian parliament. It's not just Zelensky is protected. And apparently, while they're barking at the Americans said, we tried to secure a deal. Now, did the Russians kill some Ukrainian parliamentarians? Does anybody know? Let's see. Apparently, some high-ranking officials were killed during the ongoing invasion in 2022, and since then, no, okay, they have been targeting 7 Ukrainian officers and killed as many as 7,000 in 2026. Officials. All right, let's change this to MPs. So we do have some. Yes, we do have some, but when was it? Okay. Former. Okay, we have 23. A shadow war, according to The Guardian. Well, Russia's officially blamed. There's also okay, so there's an ongoing problem with Ukrainian nationalists that's hard to finalise whether or not it was linked to Russia or not. Former MP was killed in 2025. So that's the last one in Lev. That was the one who was killed by Ukrainian nationalists. So far, they've not been able to tie it to Russia. Though it's believed the handgun may have, but he had may have been Ukraine for decades. No one's got any concrete evidence. So, parliamentary suspect, no actual evidence that any member of Ukrainian parliament has been killed by Russia or Russians in the last week. So why they haven't appeared and why... So it's not just America, though they are blaming everything on Trump. Ukraine has some serious internal issues and the MPs are not showing up, and this could be deliberately putting pressure on Zelensky. So, because they know they won't blame Europe, they'll blame America, even though we all know who's to blame and why. I believe there is now pressure in Ukraine to end the war, to take the deal, to end the war. Because Zelensky won't hold the election that will end the war. So they're trying to force a vote. Now, while Ukraine's economy is 50 billion short of the 127 billion needed per year just to run the war, so Ukraine's GDP is falling. And what about the Russian economy? People would want to know. Okay, economic growth. Post-2022, Russia, well, actually since 2019, Russia has been in recovery. It's a slow recovery. They had massive financial stimulus from the oil deal with Germany, right? They got them billions in investment. They had invested billions in the West, and with this war, they knew that they would lose access to billions of dollars in foreign funds. The same with being cut off from SWIFT, that they would get less in remittance than before, because foreign currency exchanges, they have to basically get paid in Brazilian and Iranian and other currencies, which are completely worthless outside of those countries, and buy goods which often they don't need or want, and then sell those to China and then have China send them materials, and that takes time, and each time it's costing them money to get those materials delivered. So there's a drop in revenue there. But they went from a strong economic rebound of 3.6% to growth around 1.1 to 2.2%. Why is it so varied? Because it depends how you look at it. Foreign economic growth, is slight increase, predominantly driven by gold and oil, but the rest, the 2.2% growth, is the internal growth, which is more important to Russia, is the internal growth of their economy. Now, there are many factors driving their economy and reindustrialization, and Russia is now officially a high-income country. Believe it or not, in Russia, the average wage is around $19,000, which, while not much, is a lot given their GDP. Now, their GDP currently is 2024. Why is the figures not showing? Well, the unemployment is down. They do actually have a labour shortage because they're unable to bring in Ukrainian labour, although they've had Ukrainians come. But it's still lower. Okay, as you can see, their growth has tapered off. Life expectancy has picked up, but it's still... So Population was on decline, was rising, now falling again. Population growth is pathetic. Net migration, believe it or not, there's the a lot of people returned, then tapered off, then a lot of people, a lot of Ukrainians entering the Russian Federation. But since then, the number of people leaving Russia has been greater than the number of people entering Russia. So GDP, 2.17 trillion. That has fluctuated greatly, but the peak is 21 back in 2013. Per capita, it's fallen. Per capita was 19, it's dropped to 14. Right. But GDP growth annual, 4.3. Now, why does it say 2.2 elsewhere? That is, again, the internal growth. But see, GDP is so complicated because a lot of it comes from external. And external growth, though, brings in a lot of foreign currency that Russia needs right now. Unemployment has dropped since 2024, 2025. Unemployment has dropped. Inflation has gone up, but it's come down. It was down, but it's not nowhere near its peak. Personal remittance, so foreign revenue is way down. Access to electricity is way up. Many factors in Russia is way up, and others are way down. Now, the problem is, as they reach the peak of their economy, every time their economy peaks, people get dismal because there's no growth figures to report, and that's the problem, isn't it? The constant fluctuations. If there's no upward trajectory. So we have a wild economy, right? 2024 compared to 2025 compared to 2024 is quite wild. Quite a lot of changes. So some people would say people are voting with their feet. I would suggest also a lot of those Ukrainians are Ukrainians leaving for other countries who fled the war. And so, when you find yourself on the wrong side of the Russian front and you get the UN or the Red Cross saying, hey, you want to lift somewhere? They're going, yes, sir, please. So you can't actually put down how many Russians and how many Ukrainians or other ethnicities are leaving Russia without the breakdown. But the Russian economy, by Western standards, is not looking good. But by standards Russia is used to and looking at 2024, sure, they don't like the fact that their pay is being cut, and sure, that's probably also the fact that, a lot of foreign workers aren't coming to Russia anymore for the seasonal work, and a lot of Belarusians, they relied on Poland and Ukraine, and a lot of Belarusians aren't coming to Russia either. This is it's not financially worth it. A lot of young, and of course with the decline of the number of young people, there's also a general fall off in labour. So there are many factors of course, also hitting a ceiling. You hit a ceiling of there's only so much land, only so much. We're in a position now where we have overproduction, particularly in electronics, and Russia's military and industry is solely focused now on Russia. So you're going to peak, right, and flow and ebb based on militarism, and you can't base your economy long-term on militarism. Germany dodged a bullet. Well, for years, Germany has ruled out sending the Taurus missile to Ukraine. Now they finally got an excuse. You got your own long-range missiles. Now, we know what happened. Germany, in the initial stage of the war, sent lots of equipment to Ukraine. A lot of it got pulled apart, broken down, and copied. Ukraine has copied missiles, tanks, etc. Even Poland now is saying, stop pulling our equipment apart. Ukraine is just using the war now, prolonging the war in order to get their, trying to get their way, trying to make themselves the most important bread. They want to go back to the position of where in the Soviet Union, they were the breadbasket, right? But now they want the industrial hub. They want to be the drone supplier. You know, they want to be part of the endless war club. And people are going, no, we don't want endless wars. And Ukraine says, yes, you do. Here's some drones. Go fight. So, of course, Israel is happy to buy Ukrainian drones, which is further feeding their war. And, well, make of that what you will. But, yeah, Russia told them, Russia says, hey, you blow up our ship, we're going to blow up yours. And they say, try it, we'll hit you. And, of course, America says, don't do that. So, Russia is not happy with the rest of the world. And this is, again, what big countries can do. They can blow your shit up and tell you, dare retaliate. So, Ukraine is Russia's retaliation for everything that we allegedly have done to them, which in part is alleged retaliation for everything they allegedly done to us. And if you slowly peel back the layers, you get one person hurt by one group taking out their frustrations on everyone to get to one group, and then that group getting everybody else angry at Russia in order to get at that one group. And people are sick of politics because it's whatever one group does. Well, let's just put all the politicians in a ring and let's have them fight. Sounds good to me. Who would like to see Putin and Trump going in a first round, or Putin and Zelensky, or do you imagine Ursula von der Leyen and Zelensky in a tag team match with Putin? But no, you really don't want politicians to become warriors either. You definitely want them to avoid war, but there has to be some consequences. But negotiations are ongoing. Everybody keeps telling us how wonderful they are and how happy they are, and sooner or later, people are going to call bullshit. They're going to ask for the receipts. They're going to say, well, according to this, US is going to move to ease the oil pressure price. Apparently, as of a few hours ago, Trump is going to stop bombing Iran for a little while. So we'll see how long that holds. Iran says we're not talking. Now that's the head of the IRGC, who a short time ago is now deceased. And it does appear, according to Pakistan, Iranian Speaker of the House sent a delegation to Pakistan to talk to the US Embassy there. So, yes, there are talks. Just like there are talks between US and Ukraine, and Ukraine and Russia, and Ukraine and Russia and the US, and Russia and the US. But they're all parliamentary groups, and they're all presidential groups. And then you have the unofficial departmental groups. They are all talking all the time. The only ones that have been cut off and are now back to talking again is the Russian parliamentary groups. The Russian and the US Parliament has not been speaking for a while, and now they are. Speaker Johnson had extended many times invitations to the Russians, but there were sanctions on individual Russians, so as a whole, They did not come because of threats by Ukraine. So, and Ukraine denies they are the threat. So you make of that what you will. Everybody is blaming everybody. But the point is, politics has been played. Russia wants to stabilize its economy and end this war. Ukraine doesn't. But someone is making moves to get them to end the war, whether they like it or not. Now, apparently there was a prisoner exchange, remember? And there is a exchange agreement that was reached in Geneva. And again, there's another exchange agreement that is being worked on. Yeah, there's a video of the current handover. Apparently this included some civilians, POW swaps. These are all things that are coming. So while they're claiming on one hand, the US aren't on our side, yeah, you're not a US ally. You have no formal treaty or agreement. And as far as Trump is concerned, he put his foot down and you just straight to his face said, no, you owe us weapons, man. You're going to give us billions of $300 billion. Started off with the $800 billion, then he talked it down to $300 billion. He just doesn't get it. And I don't know why. I hear it all the time. Lots of people are very angry that Ukraine isn't even getting a penny of US dollars. Because as far as they're concerned, they're sick of hearing about the thieves and then finding out the next day the thieves have up and left Ukraine with all the money they stole. And it's like, how? And then you hear that they could just rock up to a bank, load up a car boot with gold and drive off. So Ukraine officials, no wonder they can't find Ukraine parliamentarians. They're probably all driven off with cash or gold. And Ukraine doesn't know what to do. Now, if that's true or not, we should know, and know pretty soon. But the state of Ukraine is definitely, I know predominantly the cause is the war, but you can't blame it all on the war because the Ukrainian economy has been in decline and the Ukrainian population has been in decline since 91. And this is because Ukrainians keep leaving the country. And the Ukrainians left behind are increasingly older. They don't have, your children move overseas. Doesn't mean automatically you're going to have another set of children. And obviously, most of the time, the parents left behind are too old to have children. And nobody's coming back. So Ukraine is slowly bleeding people. And all the glazes, all the glory to Ukraine people, none of them are moving to Ukraine. None of them are saying, hey, Ukrainians, why don't you stay in Ukraine and make Ukraine better? Because obviously all these engineers and all these other rocket scientists and all these other drone experts who've now moved to the Middle East, not on loan to the Middle East, moved. According to the UAE, a dozen Ukrainian arms experts have just set up permanent residence and setting up a Ukrainian, setting up drone workshops in the Middle East with Saudi money. So, yeah, not a good time. But of course, individual opportunism versus national security. Americans will say, hey, it's their freedom, that's their right. But on a whole, if you support Ukraine, especially if you're Ukrainian, why aren't you there? And this is why Ukraine is in crisis. If 20 million people hadn't left Ukraine, most likely there wouldn't be a war. If millions had not withheld their vote, there likely wouldn't have been a war. If Ukraine had kept to the Minsk Accords and held the election that Zelensky promised, there wouldn't be a war. So, beating a dead horse, but still, it's gotta be, the drum has to be sounded until people start waking up and realizing this is a proxy war by Europe, started by the shelling of Donbass to provoke the Russians into invading. When all said and done, had Europe stood by its word, monitored elections, and stood up to Zelensky and said, no, you didn't win this election fair and square, where's the rest of the votes? All of this would have been avoided. It is the liberals and their constant shortcuts, their desires to ignore all the world's evils, hoping that it'll just go away, sweep everything under the rug, whistle in the dark, and think that God will shine a light on everything. This child naivety, again, when you're going to be, there's no striking me down for blasphemy or any of these other bullshit that all these people on YouTube keep talking about. Every day I get someone, Again, Ukraine has this golden opportunity, and Russia, at the end of the day, can make all the song and dance it wants. But at the end of the day, neither side should get what they want, but neither side can be forced to withdraw, I think. So, this is the sticking point. And if not, and this is the, this is two kids in a fight saying, make me. And Trump, well, do you fight the kid who can make things worse for you, or dump the kid who's just moved into the neighborhood and is a leading troublemaker, beating his chest trying to get attention? If you boil things down to its most simple and basic terms, sometimes you still have to have a bit of nuance. But at the end of the day, what you have is Putin's on his way out, but Russia and all the Russians behind him are adamant that Donbass was illegally given to Ukraine, and that Ukraine has not been good stewards of the land or its people. And whether you like them or not, there should have been an election monitored by the US and Europeans. And you missed that opportunity, because had you done it and Russia would have lost, it would be all, what are they going to do? Attack America? No. Europe and this liberal establishment deliberately created the conditions of war. Thank you for watching. Please like, share, and subscribe. Please support the channel and support me on Ko-Fi, Patreon, buy my books, buy my merch. I appreciate each and every one of you. See you in the next video, and bye for now.